Today marks 1 year since underwater explosions damaged and disabled the Nord Stream pipelines, the gas pipelines that, of course, were built from Russia to Germany under the Baltic Sea to provide Western Europe with Russian natural gas. Over the past year, official investigations of the blast have led to many different theories, explanations, and possible answers coming forth about what actually happened, and the multi-billion-dollar question still remains: who done it? According to the Washington Post, the rupture was quickly denounced by the West as an act of sabotage. United States and European officials initially blamed Russia, but questions emerged over Ukraine's responsibility because it had reportedly, quote, opposed the Kremlin-backed pipelines.
Moscow and Kyiv have both denied any part in the attack. German investigators published a report last month showing that all signs point to Kyiv as culprit. But in February, American journalist Seymour Hersh, who has been interviewed here on Rising, alleged in an article that United States Navy divers had placed explosives on the two pipelines and were later ordered to blow them up because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In a new article from Today, Seymour Hersh makes the case that it has been a year of lying since the Nord Stream explosion, arguing that the Biden administration has acknowledged neither its responsibility for the pipeline bombing nor the purpose of the sabotage. The Biden administration has denied the allegations lobbied by Hersh.
The question of who was behind the blast remains. Yeah, I do think that if we put aside... I think
Seymour's probably right.
That Americans did it?
Yeah, I mean, because we were talking about this during the break. I mean, the capabilities to do something like that, to dive that deep. You're talking about EOD teams that are more than likely going to be a part of SOCOM units. Those are special operation groups. They're very, very small. I've done a lot of training with SOCOM guys. You're talking about probably 20, 30 people. Most countries, Brie, don't have those capabilities. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's Ukraine. Maybe Russia, but more than likely
I do think
US.
that was part of Hersh's argument, that the specialized training required to do something like this is limited, and that there was, he was very detailed in his reporting about a group of divers that I believe trained in the Caribbean, and he talked about a couple of other countries, I think, that had the technical capacity, if I recall correctly, Denmark. And I don't think it being kind of directed by Ukraine precludes there being individuals who actually placed the bombs that were trained in various places or by various countries or various other foreign nationals. Yeah. I mean, the last report that I remember us covering here from the New York Times pointed to unaffiliated foreign nationals, which seemed potentially plausible, but also convenient insofar as if it's just individuals who are unaffiliated with any, country's political arm, then no one's responsible.
Yeah, because our government, we do that all the time. I mean, that's the whole point of mercenaries. That was the whole point during the the second Iraq war. I think we hired, was it Blackstone or BlackRock, whatever the group was of mercenaries. Betsy DeVos's brother started the company, but we hired them because there are rules that the military can't conduct themselves in. The CIA, they have international rules that prohibit them from partaking in certain types of behavior. Even special operations units have rules. However, you can train people and call them in when you need certain jobs done, and the U.S. can say, we don't know how or why this happened. Yeah. Our hands are clean.
Well, the people over at the Quincy Institute wrote in their Responsible Statecraft online publication article today about how, in some ways, the biggest mystery is that we just simply don't know more even a year out. They quote, they say, quote, "It seems very strange that NATO governments with their massive intelligence capabilities, particularly Washington's global reach, seem unable to get to the bottom of this." That's a quote from Jacobin reporter Branko Marcetic. We've talked to him on the show and on my own show. He says, "But even stranger still is the seeming lack of interest and discussion from these countries' various media establishments and politicians about an attack that destroyed a major piece of a NATO ally's infrastructure." And of course, part of what was so suspicious was that despite there initially being accusations that Russia was responsible, when you looked at the motive structure for the attack, it seemed evident that the West stood to gain.
Of course.
Germany had an incentive to not want to escalate with Russia, to de-escalate and to not have a direct conflict, because it stood to, I don't want to say profit, but to benefit enormously from this Russian gas supply.
Yeah.
They had invested heavily in the building of this pipeline.
That's right.
It was just finished. They had just done
right
it.
before the invasion, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And
I forgot about that.
Biden, of course, and we played many clips of this, had signaled repeatedly when asked, well, what if the pipeline comes online? Well, it won't happen. We'll take care of it. We have ways. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, don't quote me directly, but we have ways of doing this.
Slip of tongue, you think?
And then, lo and behold, you get this. So to the extent that one of our largest European allies might have had some hesitation about backing the United States full-throatedly in its proxy war with Russia, and no longer have the conflict of interest once this pipeline was blown up. Still, despite all of the incentive structures that we just described, the media, the Western media and the media in a lot of these European countries continue to point to Russia until it became no longer plausible for them to support that lie. And even they had to admit that there was absolutely no evidence that it was Russia. And then we had the story, I guess it was earlier this year, of a boat that had been found on the shores, I think, of Ukraine, that had trace amounts of explosives on it, but seemed to be almost like, well, I shouldn't say that. It seemed a little too convenient. The boat didn't seem quite large enough to hold the volume of explosives necessary to actually carry out the job. It felt almost, to some people reporting on it, like a plant of sorts, to be able to, again, just point over there and not ask questions about.
But I wonder if the media ignoring this is purposeful, or if it's just because they don't believe they have the capabilities of really understanding this. I mean, again, as I stated, and I wish we could have brought on a military expert to really unpack this. I mean, you're talking about very, very unique skills. I mean, I don't know if any of their viewers have ever served in the military, but those EOD teams are highly specialized. You're talking years and years of ridiculous training, and only, I think, 2 parts of the country where we even conduct those types of training mechanisms. So I wonder if the media ignoring it is because they just don't care, or, wow, we've never encountered something like this. How do we even properly cover this?
I perhaps cynically believe it's because, not that they don't care, but that they are disinterested and dissuaded from pursuing a story that makes America and or its allies look bad.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a tendency to report information from the intelligence agencies as though it is fact, instead of using it as evidence that they then have to do subsequent reporting on. The same way that the media often just reports police statements as fact, as opposed to it just being one statement from somebody involved in an incident that needs to be reported on. And I think that's how you got, just conveniently, all of the most the theories that were most flattering to the state published first.
Of course.
And until we got to this point, when there are no more flattering to the state theories published, then maybe the publishing dries up entirely. But that's my own subjective, cynical take.
You know, the intelligence community is always going to have its aims, though, right? I mean, we've talked a lot, and I don't know if I mentioned this on the show, but I think yesterday, or maybe it was last week, you and I talked about the Psychological Operations Unit, and I was telling you about how the military literally has a unit that is designed to orchestrate disinformation campaigns against foreign adversaries. But some people who have now become aware of this particular unit have wondered, well, what if they're testing this stuff out on us? And so I say that to say, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised, Brie, if the Intelligence Committee has sort of given the media information that they want the media to report on that may not even be true. And the media, like you're saying, which I believe is accurate, they're just taking, like, oh, it comes from CIA sources or NSA sources, so we got to run with this. Why would they lie to us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to think that that's the likeliest story.
I mean,
and there haven't been many opportunities to investigate. I mean, there was, I think, was it a Norwegian or Danish? One Scandinavian country was tasked with doing the investigation. There were people, I think Russia and I think one other ally, voted in support of there being an independent UN investigation, but all of the other countries allied, perhaps under the thumb of Western interest, declined. I believe Aaron Mate and Seymour Hirsch, and I think one other journalist that we had on the show, all gave testimony in favor of there being an independent UN investigation, because why wouldn't you want there to be an independent UN investigation?
Never gonna come.
And it was the rest of the member nations voted that down. So here we are, a year later, with none the wiser.
I think it was a strategic move by the United States based on everything you sort of laid out. I think based on Hirsch's articles, I think the U.S. had an interest in doing this. And again, I can't think of too many countries, even the countries with the capabilities that you mentioned. I think you said even Denmark may have that capability. We certainly know Russia has the capability. Brie, I don't think those other countries, though, would have the influence in convincing the other UN allied nations to vote against investigating this the way the U.S. can, which again is why I believe we were probably behind this.
Oh, well, maybe we'll finally get some more insights in the next 365 days to the anniversary of the Nord Stream pipeline. But until then, stick around. We have more Rising for you coming up right after this.